Hi, everybody. I'm Pasha Kane, and welcome to Raise the Bar in Real Estate. And I'm so excited to be featuring Eden Toothman today. I have so many questions for this woman. One, she has just this most impressive resume that you'll hear about, but also two, I think this is an extremely valuable topic regarding what's the role of title, what does this entity really do during a transaction. And we've all heard of it, but we're really going to unpack a lot of those details today. Just to highlight Eden, she has over 20 years of experience in real estate, really just extremely knowledgeable as of currently the VP and senior escrow officer. She's that lawyer's title right now. She has a wealth of knowledge around all things around legal contracts, working with title insurance, working with lender requirements, and she knows everything from contracts to deeds to 1031 exchanges. So we're so lucky to have her today. Thank you, Eden, for joining us.
Thank you. That was a wonderful introduction. I'm so happy to be here and I look forward to digging in and shining a light on what is happening with title and escrow.
Love
Yep.
it, love it. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get into this industry?
So that's a funny story. I went to UC Berkeley for undergraduate. I was thinking about being a doctor or a scientist, taking the classes to do that. My second year, or the summer of after my first year, I needed a job. I needed to make some money, as any college kid would. And I had a friend whose mom owned an escrow company in Los Angeles. And he said, "Why don't you come and answer the phones for the summer and give it a try?" So I did. I went and answered the phones, and Los Angeles escrow is very different than Oregon escrow. And this was 20 plus years ago. So if you can imagine, there was a lot of faxes and mailing stuff. But I did that for the summer and I went back to UC Berkeley, went back into my classes that next year. And I ended up getting another job at a title company, being the receptionist. So that's how I started. I was the receptionist and I would stack my classes to be Tuesday, Thursday. I'd work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'd work over the summer, the winter, any opportunity I could to work. And after I graduated, I was so deep in at that point that I wanted to stay and grow my career. And I became an escrow officer at 22, which is very young for an escrow officer to start. But
Mhm.
it's been a wonderful career. I spent many years in the Bay Area and I moved up to Oregon almost 7 years ago to work here in Portland.
Oh, that's great. Well, we're so lucky to have you. And
Mhm.
I think, one of the first questions that comes to mind is when you're talking is like, you know, somebody who's only had two or three transactions, maybe in their life, they work with title, but could you talk a little bit about what the role of title is in a home purchase transaction?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we have two purposes. We're a title and escrow company. So escrow, we are the neutral third party. So we take in the funds from the buyer, we take in documents from the seller and the lender. We make sure everyone agrees in the contract and agrees how the funds will be dispersed. And on the closing date, we record the deed, we pay off the liens and transfer the money to the seller. So we act as a neutral party in that aspect. From the title insurance side, we are also giving title insurance policies to the buyer and the lender, guaranteeing them that they have ownership in the property, or for the lender, the correct lien position, and guaranteeing there's no fraud or forgery or anything that could come up that would affect them. So it's pretty serious stuff. It sounds easy, but it is a rather complicated process. And we try to, be ducks on the pond, and we're swimming really fast underneath, but we try to make it look very smooth.
I can definitely attest to that. You guys definitely keep all the balls in the air. Um, but yeah, I think what's interesting is, I think there might be sometimes without people really understanding the value that title brings is like, well, why do I need them? Why can't I just like write a check and just kind of not involve title? But, hearing your talk, it's definitely this insurance, you know, support the system that makes sure that your funds are not there's no fraud involved, there's no illegal activity, it's all like above board, and also too that you make sure that you're recorded with the title and it's a proper, sorry, with us the county, and make sure
Yeah,
that's a proper transaction.
properly done.
So
Mhm.
yeah, so what advice would you give somebody as they're doing a home transaction? Like, how should they really, what's the role they should play with title, and how can they make your like life easier in that aspect?
Oh, that's very sweet. I would say for any buyer and seller, I understand that you don't do this every day, and I do it every day. There's a lot of stuff that comes out, especially the one of the first items they're going to receive is the title report, and that can be extremely overwhelming for someone to understand. And I would like to reassure people it's okay to ask us questions. We're here to help you. Um, my role in residential, especially residential real estate, we review every title report. We're looking for unusual things, unpaid taxes, mortgages, judgments against the seller, judgments against the buyer, and we're going to address those. I would say mostly, you know, we're doing it. You don't need to actually help us with it unless it involves you, unless you're one of the parties. So we have a lot of things come up that are sometimes sensitive, especially for buyers and sellers. Perhaps they have old child support judgments that they've maybe even finished making payments on, but the satisfaction was never filed properly with the court. And so that can bring up some old memories that are hard. But work with us, we're a nice neutral party. We're happy to call that judgment creditor and make arrangements for them to sign off and satisfy that debt. So,
Yeah, that's so valuable because when I think about getting title reports, they get a little bit overwhelming. There are just a lot of documents and things that just, if you're not used to reading them, they can be a little bit complex. So,
yeah.
um, so it's good to hear that you guys will really be the ones spearheading those discussions. Any advice to a seller buyer when they get a title report, like what their role should be?
Yeah. No, that's great. Our title reports will come out hyperlinked, meaning any document that is recorded and referenced in that report has a link that you can click on to access it. For the buyers, especially, we recommend that you take a look at the easements on the property, the CC&Rs. So those are the covenants, conditions, and restrictions for the neighborhood. Those are very important to make sure that you're purchasing a home that is going to meet your needs. For example, if you want to run a daycare out of this home and the CC&Rs say you can't run a business out of your home, that could be a conflict and you would want to know about it before you purchase them.
Mhm.
Or, we had one where the condo complex only allowed dogs under 100 pounds. And the buyer had a dog that was over 100 pounds. So those are really important things to read, and easements too. And then for the seller, you want to see what kind of, hopefully there's no surprises, let's put it that way. Hopefully you're aware that you paid your property taxes or didn't, that you have a mortgage or maybe a mortgage and a line of credit. And if there is a surprise, we'll work through it. There's a solution for everything. Let's put it that way.
No, that's great. Yeah, it definitely gives you peace of mind when you have a clean title. Um, And can you speak to a little bit of like, once you have a clean title, like what is, you hear about a deed of trust and a promissory note. Obviously, if you're getting a lender involved, can you unpack that for us? And what is the end goal with a clean title? And once you record it, um, can you help us understand
Yeah.
it?
When we record deeds, the ownership is fully transferred to the buyer. And if they have a mortgage, their lender will secure the loan using a note and deed of trust. The note is the private agreement, the promissory note, private agreement that outlines the repayment terms of that loan. That is not public information. It's private information, but the deed of trust is public information, and that does have the original loan amount on it, the borrower name, the address that it's secured to. If it is an adjustable rate loan, that will have the interest rates and a rider in the back. But for the most part, it's pretty unknown what interest rate that buyer got. However, that is an encumbrance on the property. So the buyer owns it, but it is encumbered with what we call a voluntary lien. Voluntary means you wanted that loan
Yeah.
versus an involuntary lien, which would be like an IRS tax lien or a state tax lien. Those are involuntary liens. And what happens is when a buyer goes and finally pays off their mortgage, the lender will record something called a deed of reconveyance, which releases that encumbrance from the property. And then
Mhm.
it is home free and clear.
Um, and in your experience, does a lender usually like a clean deed of trust or title when they are going to be the primary lien holder? So are you seeing that that's pretty common?
Yeah, I think there's an understanding in the escrow process. So for example, in a resale transaction where the seller might have items affecting the title, the lender is going to be very direct with us and say, we need these items cleared at closing. And there's an understanding that it can't be done beforehand because the money from the new lender is needed to pay off those loans. So
Mhm.
us as the title insurance company, we're kind of that middle person that's like, give me the money, we'll pay that off, and then you have insurance to protect you. So
Yeah.
that is our role. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, which again, it really reinforces kind of the importance of working with you guys. And then this brings me to another question is, often when we do a purchase or we're helping a client, they have to drop off, or submit their earnest money deposit. And then there's a transfer of funds to solidify the purchase.
Yeah.
I know I get questions quite a bit of like, how am I protected? How do I make sure I'm not gonna get wire fraud or, it's definitely stressful to be handing over those sums of money. So what happens like with the earnest money and then also the closing funds?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And wire fraud is real. I've been lucky in my 20 plus years. I've had maybe 4 attempts where people have impersonated me or the lender in the transaction to try to intercept closing funds. Um, and what we found is these bad actors are getting into email accounts. Sometimes it's unprotected accounts where people have gone on Wi-Fi and they've gotten in, and they just sit and watch this whole transaction unfold from the
Oh my
beginning,
gosh.
and they know the exact right time to swoop in. The good news is in all the cases that we've had, we've educated the buyer in the beginning of the transaction that this could happen. So every single one of those buyers knew the signs to look out for. When everybody suddenly had Gmail emails, it didn't look right. The email would come at 3 in the morning, for example. There was lots of urgency, like you need to do this now. So we were very lucky that we had educated them and that they had taken our warnings. And in all those cases, what we ask is for them to forward the information to us so we can report it to the FBI and to local law enforcement, and they can go in and shut those bank accounts down. But back to the initial earnest money and closing funds, one of the first things we do when we open a transaction is we ask for the contact information for the buyer, phone and email. We have a wonderful digital platform that goes out that welcomes the buyer to the transaction. It has a code that goes to your phone. You enter the code to authenticate that we're working with the right person. We didn't just email it to someone, it's email and phone number. Once they're in, they can do their earnest money remotely with their phone, take pictures of the front and back to submit it to us without having to come in. They're more than welcome to come in, but it's a really cool, easy option to avoid traveling at that moment. as they proceed through that questionnaire. There's wire instructions that has a whole video on wire fraud that they can optionally watch, but there is a video that explains pretty in detail what to look for. And then it also gives them wire instructions at that moment in a secured platform. All over the wire instructions that says, please call before sending a wire. And so probably 10 times a day, the phone rings and somebody is asking to verify these wire instructions, but it is so important to do so. And
Yeah.
same on our end, in the beginning of the whole wire fraud thing, probably 15 plus years ago, we were the victims of the wire fraud.
Mhm.
So it took the title company a while to figure out, we would get an email, hey, I just came to the signing and I would like my funds to go somewhere else instead. And it only took a couple times for title companies to lose money before everyone figured out that we needed to do something different. So for outgoing money, our rule of thumb is anytime we're doing a wire, we are verifying that account on a verified phone number. That includes payoffs to lenders, that includes commissions, that includes seller proceeds. And we're doing that unless we receive them in person and we verified the ID with the seller. So
Mhm.
we have a lot of protocols in place, and but yeah, wire fraud is real and it's unfortunately still actively going on.
Yeah, yeah, it's scary. And I mean, can somebody just, like you said, come in with a check if they feel, you know, more comfortable, or do you prefer
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There is some timing with cashier's checks. They're banked at night. So if someone deposits a cashier's check today, we bank it at night. The funds are available next business day. So if we have a closing where they're coming in on the day of closing to sign and they haven't deposited that cashier's check, we can only accept a wire.
got
But
it?
other than that, yes, cashier's checks are still a wonderful way to pay.
Good.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's just kind of what people's comfort level is. So, and
absolutely.
I know my parents would prefer to write a check. So
And we still have sellers that prefer to receive a check and they want to take it to the bank. So we understand.
that's great. Early in the conversation, you touched a little bit about title insurance. You we're also advising our clients to get their, if they are buying, to get their property insurance going. Can you kind of just speak to what is the value of title insurance,
Yeah.
and does it cross over with other insurances, or is it really just specific to the title transaction?
No, that's very good. Very good question. So one of the really unique things about title insurance is unlike fire insurance or car insurance where you're renewing it and paying it either monthly or annually, title insurance is one time. You
Hmm.
pay one time and you have it as long as you or your heirs own that property. And if you think about the value, let's just say the title insurance is $1,200 and the sales price is $500,000. For $1,200, you're protecting your purchase of $500,000.
Yeah.
You could probably only get maybe 3 hours of an attorney's time with that amount of money if you were to face litigation or try to do something on your own to clear something up. So it's a huge, it's the best insurance you could buy. Like it's just for dollar value. The other thing that's different about title insurance versus other insurances is other insurance is doing their risk analysis as if something is going to happen in the future, like the home could burn down, where we're doing all the work to try to prevent something from happening. And that's what the title examination part is where that comes into play, and us clearing the title and us getting the sellers to sign affidavits, maybe confirming that they don't have a mortgage on the property. So we're doing all the legwork to prevent a claim. We don't want a claim. They're very costly. I think they say like the average claim is $100,000. They're very expensive when we do have them.
Mm.
So yes, the premium to pay the one time is well worth it. And as a seller, we're a seller paid state in Oregon. As the seller, you probably would prefer that they have a title claim. I mean, of course, you don't want to initiate it, but imagine if there was no title company, who would the buyer come to if something happened? It would
Yeah,
go,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, like you said, it has tremendous value, and just as this safety net, just to give you peace of mind.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, we've had over the years several claims come through. For example, we had one where the title report came out. There was no loan on the title report because the previous deed of trust had been reconveyed, is what we call it, where the lender releases their interest. The reconveyance was done several months before this came into escrow. We closed. The seller said they had no loan, and then it went into foreclosure.
Oh, wow.
It was a forged reconveyance.
Oh my
So
God.
it was a complete forgery. So it went into foreclosure. The buyers contacted us, and we had to go to the auction and buy the property back for them and cover all those expenses. Now, mind you, every time we get burned, we have a new protocol.
Yeah.
And so now, anytime there is a reconveyance that's been recorded in the absence of a new loan, we have to call the lender, the prior lender, to verify that they really did sign that. So, but that's just one example. I mean, there's all sorts of and then there's fraud that we've prevented that we've never gotten to that point. I've had people pretend to be family members with the same name. So grandson pretending to be grandfather who is deceased. We've had forged deeds that we've caught, and just through handwriting analysis really early on realized they were forged and declined those transactions and then told all the other title companies to watch out for that property.
Wow.
Um, so yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there. But yeah.
Oh my God, Ina, but you have so many stories. It's like you got this cape on, trying to keep the bad guys away from the.
It's hard. It's hard. And they're smart, As you know, right now, our biggest problem is the absentee owner fraud, which is very prevalent. And I had one maybe 4 or 5 months ago. It was a real sad situation. It was a quick escrow, it was a 1 week closing, and we've already been burned by the absentee fraud, which of course the title insurance covered the new buyer, and we had to unravel those. But um, what happened is it was a week-long closing, real quick. It opened a Friday afternoon, and our protocol is to now send letters to the owner at their last mailing address that the county has for them. They're absentee. This was vacant land, so they weren't living there. The seller lived in Hawaii. That's where his address went to. So we sent a UPS letter, but it didn't make it out Friday when escrow opened. It went out on Monday. And if you've ever sent something overnight to Hawaii, it's actually not overnight, it's 2 days. So it was expected to be delivered on Wednesday. But in the meantime, the purported seller filled out our digital opening package because the agent provided his email and phone number because he had been working with him. And he submitted all of his information back. But at this point, we had known we had a short timeline. We needed to do some extra research. So we have ability to do research on people. And I was able to pull up the guy's date of birth, last four of his social, compare it to the one that the seller had submitted. And he had the last four of the social correct. The date of birth was off by 1 day.
Oh,
I
wow.
called the guy because there was actually an old loan on the deed, an old deed of trust on the title report from a prior owner. So there was a private loan, and we see this very often. Sometimes a seller will give a loan back to the buyer, and the loan is satisfied, but nobody knows the proper way to release that deed of trust or do the reconveyance. So they just forget. We
Mhm.
see it all the time. So I noticed that and I called the seller and I said, hey, we have a little title defect. Here's what we need to do to clear it up. And he wanted nothing to do with me on the phone. He said, just send it in an email. We'll take care of it. So I got really suspicious. And so then I searched this seller, and he was a dentist in Honolulu. And so I called his office and I said, hey, I'm looking for Dr. So and so. Are you selling this vacant land in Portland? And he said, no, I'm not. So we had uncovered this fraudster.
Oh,
Um, And yeah, it was so sad because these buyers were so excited about buying this land next to their house that they'd wanted to buy forever, and the guy would never sell to them. Um, but yeah, we prevented, they're supposed to close 2 days from then, and we prevented it.
Wow, wow. I mean, also I can imagine your just years of experience also played into that. I'm sure just if somebody was super new, they might have not have detected that. So,
Right. Well, and I think also when there's a lot of pressure,
mhm.
um, that's when we actually our spidey senses go up because yeah, if there's a lot of pressure to hurry, hurry, do something, then we're gonna slow
Yeah,
down and say, why is there this pressure? So yeah, that's
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, just that's gosh, Eden, you
yeah.
guys really have, I think, a trait that a lot of people don't have in this
Yeah,
industry. A lot of
yeah.
patience and due diligence and mindfulness for sure. So,
Hmm.
well, let me ask you just one last question. We talked a lot about the role, your role, and also role title within a transaction. When would somebody interact with you or title outside of a home purchase?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. So one example, we get calls a lot from people who maybe bought their home 10 years ago and they need a copy of their closing statement, or they're trying to get the copy of their deed. And so we'll take these calls, and sometimes it wasn't even us that handled it, but we'll help them try to figure out who did and get them to the right place and get them a copy of their deed. Closing statements after 7 years are purged, so we're not going to have those, but recorded documents are always there. So we're happy to help those people. So we get a lot of sort of random calls or requests. Sometimes people are trying to seek legal advice or estate planning advice, which we can't give. But we'll explain that to them. We're actually here to provide title insurance and assist with escrows, but let us help you with a couple attorneys' names, for example, that could help you.
Hmm.
Or, for example, say two neighbors want to do a lot line adjustment. That is something that we do help with. So they'll call us and say, hey, we've agreed to this lot line adjustment and the county's approved it, and we need your services to help double check the title. And, so if you're doing, for example, if you're doing a lot line adjustment and your lender has secured their loan to your square of property, and you now either want to give that away, you have to get their permission to give that little strip away.
Yeah,
So we help with that, for example. Um, so yeah, so lot line adjustments or researching. We get a lot of research requests where people need a chain of deed history from a certain period of time to satisfy the county for whatever request they're trying to do. And we have a department that works on that. So those are kind of the outside of the normal resale, refi transactions that you'll encounter us.
I love it. No, that's really great. So I think sometimes our perspective is like, oh, just, we connect with title just during a home transaction.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, lastly, what advice would you give to your younger self?
Oh my goodness. I mean, I was the shyest kid. I couldn't even order a pizza for myself before I started working in this industry. So I would tell my younger self, wow, you're not going to believe where you are in the future, and how strong you can be. Uh, I mean, even the technology since I started has changed so quickly. Um, I don't know if it's advice, but I would just say you're doing a good job.
Oh, you are. Oh my God.
Thank you.
You're one of the best, seriously. And I appreciate you coming on and giving us this wealth of information and knowledge. How can somebody get a hold of you? And if can you share best way to contact you? if they.
Yeah, so I'm Eden Toothman. I think if you Google, I should be near the top. Luckily, I think there's only one in the United States. Um, and I work with Lawyers Title. You can also call me at 503-535-0039. But yeah, I'm on the Lawyers Title website, Lawyers Title of Oregon website. I have a Reach 150 account. I'm on LinkedIn, all those ways can get to
Yeah.
me. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Eden. Appreciate your time. And it was great chatting with you.
Yeah, you too. Thank you so much. Thank you.